We've got a room of remarkable ladies who all have inspirational stories, and they have used their voice to lift others. Beside me, I'm honoured to speak to one of the most powerful women in the world, a remarkable woman herself, former general manager at Microsoft, co-chair of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, a philanthropist who has helped award grants worth more than $50 billion to organizations and individuals in 139 countries. But just as important, she is a mother, she is a wife, and she is a woman. Please welcome Melinda Gates. Thank you for being here. First of all, congratulations on the book. It was something I picked up and I couldn't put down because of not just your story, but the other stories that you share from other women in the book. But I want to go back a little bit. I want to go back to, I think the most important thing in life is having purpose.
For sure.
And you had an incredible career, you have an incredible career, but before you met Bill Gates and married him, before you had children, you had an incredible career in tech. Then you find yourself, when you decide to have children, that your purpose changed a little bit. Let's talk about purpose in your life.
Yes. Well, I always knew growing up somehow that if I was lucky enough, I wanted to be a mom and I wanted to be a working woman. And so I've been lucky enough now to have 3 wonderful children. They're ages 23, 20, and 16, but also 2 careers. A career I loved in tech for over 9 years, and now this second career that I have as co-chair of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
I look at, just from my own background, my mother is the youngest of 13 children, Catholic background.
Wow.
I'm 34 now, and I haven't had a child yet, but I'd like to have children. But it was my choice because I kind of put ahead my career and doing lots of other things. My grandmother wasn't as fortunate. She was fortunate for having all those children, but it wasn't a choice. For you, when did the whole family planning awareness come into it, thinking, I had this choice, and not everyone does?
Yes, so I've been lucky enough now to travel for the foundation to many, many, many countries all over the world for the last 20 years. But as I would be out speaking with women, I would be there to talk about vaccines, right, and their children's issues. And they kept bringing up contraceptives to me over and over and over again. And the importance of them in their lives, contraceptives, but how they used to have access and now they don't. And so it really became crystal clear to me in 2010 that this was an issue we needed to take up as a world. And we could not let over 200 million women who are asking us for contraceptives, we couldn't let them down. Because as you said, when a woman can space the births of her children, she then can go on to, if she has children, to lift those children up, to lift herself up, to enter the workforce as she chooses. It changes her life. And it's just one of those fundamental tools we almost, in some ways, take for granted, I think, in countries like the UK or the US.
When you lift women up, you lift the whole society up. But that is a message that's quite difficult to spread. How have you found tackling that in some countries, in some communities?
Yes, you're exactly right, that when you lift a woman up, she lifts up everybody around her. And I find it difficult at times to talk about to be frank, developed world countries, sometimes even my own. It shouldn't be difficult, it should be obvious. But it's also very difficult in some of these developing world, these low-income countries, because there's so many societal issues there that women face.
And then talking about men, I love men. Men
Me
are
too.
great. And I think as soon as you start talking about female empowerment, automatically, not all men, but some men think, oh, well, you're knocking men in some way. And I remember on the show before discussing body image, and we had a tweet in from a male listener saying, oh, you all hate men. I'm like, no, I love men. And how important it is, well, to have men on your side.
It's fundamental. So I have many men in my life that I adore, starting with a husband and a son. And I've worked around many what I call enlightened men who want the world to be better for everybody, which includes women. And so we need male allies. We need them to stand next to women and say, this is what's right for women. We also need them because they still often hold the positions of power in our societies. We need them to call out other males' behavior when it's not right, or to stand for the right policies for women. That's how we're going to lift women up, men and women coming together.
In 2019, this year, the World Economic Forum says it will take another 200 years for the global gender pay gap to disappear. Here in the UK, nearly 8 in 10 companies still pay their male employees more than their female counterparts in the UK. What will it take for that to change, Melinda?
It will take transparency to actually publish what we're paying men versus women in equal level jobs, and then it will take a commitment to make that change. But what we know from any type of societal change is once you have transparency, once you shine the light of day on it, it can't continue to exist. And then there's pressure, public pressure for things to change. And it's just time. It's time to pay men and women the same amount for the same job and the same work.
Exactly. It's common sense. It seems like common sense. I don't know why it's not happening. But we have the right as well as individuals to fight for what we think we're worth and to fight for other people as well. In the last few days, the President of the United States has been tweeting. And you have actually talked about this before, saying it's important to be respectful in what you tweet and what you say. Can I ask you your reaction to the last few comments he's made to the 4 congresswomen about leaving the country?
I think it's unacceptable for anyone to make those kind of disparaging comments about someone else. Unacceptable. So I'm pleased to see the Congress standing up and stepping up and saying that's not right. That's important to do. We have to push back anytime there's a bully, whether it's on the playground, whether it's what you counsel your children about at the highest levels of society. We have to say what we know to be true and what's right and what's wrong. Disparaging comments are wrong.
The president has denied that he's racist. Do you think he's racist after hearing his comments?
I don't know. I've met with him once, but I don't know him personally, so I don't know. I just know that what I am hearing and what he is typing on his phone is wrong.
If you're telling someone who is American as he is, to leave the country if you're not happy, and sugarcoating it in the fact that he loves his country, what he's saying is racist.
I'm sorry, what's the question?
What Trump is saying is racist. If he's telling people because of how they look, even though they are American, that they should leave the country.
I think it's wrong. Absolutely wrong. It's not the values that we stand for as a nation.
Is he a bully?
Yes.
I want to talk about some of the women that you've met in the book, because each little story is so powerful in itself. And you talk about, you question yourself, who am I to go in here and try to help someone? Who am I to go in here with my lovely life and my good bank balance and my lovely family and my great career and opportunity, which not everyone else has? And there's one story that maybe you will share with all of us here, which was in Tanzania when you met a girl called Anna. And do you remember this story was when she was traveling so far to get the water and mind her children? And it almost made you question you a little bit about your home life, but can you talk to me about Anna?
Sure. So my oldest daughter Jen was 15 at the time, and we went and lived in Anna and Sonari, her husband's home. They were kind enough to have us into their boma to live with them. And Anna and my daughter and I went to collect water, which is what women's role is all over the world if you don't have clean water coming into your home. And we walked to get the water, and it was hard work in the heat and in the sun. And I will tell you, I work out in the gym, and I had a difficult time carrying water on my head. And in fact, the other women of the village would come out of their homes and chuckle at my daughter and me at how much we were struggling with this.
And how much they're holding compared to what you're holding.
Yes, I'm holding literally half as much as what she's holding, and I had to still pour some out. And it started to really open my eyes to all the unpaid labor that I had read about that women do all over the world. But I hadn't really questioned myself about the unpaid labor we do in our own homes in high-income countries. So every single day in the UK, women do 100 minutes more on average than their husband in their home of unpaid labor. My country, it's 90 minutes more a day. If you look at the global average, it adds up to 7 years of a woman's life. Now, some of that is loving care we want to do in our home, but a lot is chores. And so we need to have that conversation in our homes to say, who's doing what? How do we redistribute the workload? Because it keeps women from doing other things they might want to do, taking care of their own health, going out and doing productive work. And if we don't actually recognize our own social norms, Anna's social norm was obvious to me because I could see the women carrying water and not the men. It was starkly there. But we often don't talk about the social norms in our own homes. And so I bring this up in the book, Unpaid Labor, because I think we need to look in our homes and our communities and our workforces and say, do we have our true equality? And what holds us back? And one of them is unpaid labor.
And Anna, I think, brought this up. She's a very feisty lady and said, I can't do this. I can't look after our children and go to the well because it's so far away. And her husband, her partner, said, I'll go for you. And he was almost ridiculed by the other men in the village.
Absolutely. So it was the birth of their first son. She totally loved her husband. He loved her. But with the birth of her first son, Sonari came home from the fields one day, and Anna had packed her bags and was sitting on the front porch and said, I'm leaving you. And he was mortified. He said, you're leaving me. And she said, yes, I can't eke out a life here and nurse our son and take care of the home and fetch water. And so when Sonari offered to go to the local well and get the water, and it was a very long trip, the villagers ridiculed him. They said, oh my gosh, he's been mesmerized, witchcraft by his wife. But in fact, the more he walked in her shoes and saw how hard it was, the other men in the village started joining him. And eventually they started to say, well, let's get our bicycles and go. And eventually they got this great idea of, let's get the entire community together and build water pans near our homes and our villages. And so sometimes it takes us walking in the steps of one another. Sonari to walk in Anna's shoes to see how difficult this task was that he didn't even realize, he just assumed she would do, because that's what men have always assumed forever in the developing world.
And you say in the book as well, you look at your own home life. You're doing so much. You're doing the school run with the kids. Tell me that little story about when Bill decided to take over the school run for 2 days.
Sure. So our oldest daughter was about to start preschool. And Bill and I completely agreed where we wanted her to go to preschool. And it was preschool through 8th grade, not close to our house. And all of a sudden I could see the years ahead of driving in my little minivan, this long distance to school. And I said, let's just wait. Let's put her in the neighborhood school, and in 3 years we'll put her in that school when she starts the elementary part of her schooling. And Bill said, no, I feel very strongly she start this school now. And in that moment of sort of frustration on my part, he offered to do something like Sonari had in their marriage, in his marriage with Anna. And Bill said, what if I drive several mornings a week? Now, mind you, Bill was still CEO of Microsoft. It meant an hour commute for him instead of just 45 minutes, which was what I was going to do. But that simple, intimate conversation that we had where I was frustrated and he offered something changed. It changed things for us. It changed their relationship because he's in the car and he's talking to her, which he did all through the teen years with all 3 of our children. And in the school, a mom sidled up to me about 3 weeks into the school year and said, have you noticed anything different here? And I was like, yeah, there's lots of other dads dropping off. She says, yeah. We all went home and said to our husbands, by gosh, if Bill Gates can drive, so can you. So that intimate conversation shifted things in our relationship, my husband's relationship with the kids, and inadvertently in the school community as well.
And it shows as well as one small change. It takes one person to do one thing, and then it's just that ripple effect.
Absolutely.
You can see we have incredible women here in front of us, and I'm going to take some questions from the audience. I'm going to go first to Nissy T. Hi, Nissy.
Hi. First of all, thank you so much, Melinda, for even being here. It is such an honor to be in the room with you and to be with these incredible women all in one space. So my name is Nissy. I go by Nissy T online. I'm a content creator, I'm a speaker and a confidence coach, and I'm all about power and confidence because I grew up for a very long time of my life very, very insecure, low self-esteem. I literally was that individual, and I know that a lot of women can relate to this, that looked in the mirror and thought, I hate, everything that I see. I hate everything in front of me. Came from a, very working class background. Both my parents are from the Democratic Republic of Congo. Came here with nothing. Basically built on that. Worked my ass off. Got into Cambridge University. Came out of Cambridge, and I've since been running my own businesses. So I'm definitely all about helping people reclaim their power, which is something that you really speak about in your work. And quickly before I shift, I know we don't have much time, but I just wanted to say thank you also to you because for me, in the culture that I come from, a lot of women get left in the background. And it could have been very, very easy for Melinda Gates to be left in the shadow of the Bill Gates. But I really appreciate the fact that you are not only a businesswoman, but you are also a wife and a mother, and you show that actually you can be Melinda Gates on your own outside of your husband as well. So I just want to say thank you, because that was something that really, really scared me for a long time, that I was just worried about, because I thought, I'm going to get married one day. I really do want to get married one day. I want to get married. Hope that he's listening. I want to get married one day. I do want to get married one day, but that was always my worry, that I marry a powerful man, but then what happens to me? So just thank you. Now, my actual question is this. You speak a lot in your book about giving women choices. Obviously, one of the things you mentioned was about contraception, and about the fact that there were women that you met in these different parts of the world who had, vaccinations for their children, but they would come to you and ask you, but what about me? I just want to have a choice as to how much I space out my children, whether or not I can have, so many children. So it's all about giving basically women back their power and allowing them to have that choice, and to give them that strength. Now, what would you say, are practical things that we can do? Because that's a very practical notion to add to these people. But what are practical things that we can do today in the world that we live in, with social media and women still being pitted against each other, women still being compared with one another, whether it be your looks, your skin tone, or whatever it is? What are some of the practical things that you would say that we should be doing to really put choice back in the hands of women? And to allow us to, again, lift each other up as well?
I would say many of the things that you're doing, coaching of other women, reminding women that we can do this, we can create societal shift. I think looking at our own selves and saying, where did I get it right and where did I get it wrong? And being honest about that. I've tried to be very honest in the book about places where I didn't get it right. I had to really work on perfectionism for a long time, right? And so speaking about the issues we have all faced, the barriers that we've faced in our homes, our communities, our workforce, we have to talk about those openly if we're going to create change. And I think we have to not only mentor, but I think we have to get men and women to sponsor other women. If you're going to lift women up in society, we have to sponsor them into roles, and we have to role model. Role models are incredibly important. And believe me, I did not want to be a public figure. I was happy working in private, as you said, in the shadows at the foundation. I can get a lot of work done behind the scenes, but I realized that I needed to embrace my role and to speak out so that I could role model for others.
Thank you so much. And I think if we didn't waste as much time being up against each other, the amount of time that we have to do something beneficial is so important as well. Sophia, I'm going to come to you next. Hi, Sophia.
Hi, I'm Sophia Moreau. I'm with the Young Women's Trust. I'm a campaigner, researcher, and policy specialist. One of my current campaigns is for students to have access to maternity rights. It's not well known, but they actually don't extend to students, and that ranges from basics, such as not being kicked off of your course because you're pregnant, as well as access to flexible working and the like. I ended up facing so much resistance, because this was found through lived experience, that I ended up having to be the precedent case in legal action. I essentially wanted to ask you, the growing list of issues which are discriminatory that we accept as normal or are unaware of as a society, how do you prioritize which one you act upon, especially when you're a mother or a wife and you have a job yourself?
Well, I think you're a good role model, right? That you picked something that was personal to you, that you knew to be true. I think we all have to look at what we have faced as women and what we do currently face, and we have to pick off the ones that we uniquely think we have a role in changing. So for instance, the reason I chose family planning back in 2010 and became very public about it in 2012 was because I thought I had learned enough in the developing world, and I thought that I'd heard enough women and I'd done my work to find out where the research was, where it didn't exist. And I knew this had to be on the global health agenda. And to be frank, I kept looking for somebody else to do it, and I couldn't find that advocate. I mean, that would have been easier for me. And I finally said, for whatever reason, I'm in this unique role in this position. I need to help with our partners get this back on the world stage, the global health agenda, and get it funded. And so I applaud any woman who takes the issue that she knows to be true and is personal in her life and works on it. Because there are so many issues, as you say, that we need to face, and we need to bring down those barriers for women if we're going to lift up all women.
Just wondering, anyone else in the room, because I feel a lot of people have been in that situation where you're thinking, am I going to take this battle on now? Because that's a lot. Am I going to be the person that does this? Because it's so much easier to let someone else do that. And I'm just wondering, anyone else in have had a situation similar? Oh, Gina, yes. Gina Martin.
Hi, my name's Gina. I'm an activist and a writer. I did a campaign the last 2 years to make upskirting illegal in England and Wales after I was upskirted. And I really struggled with that too, I think, because at the beginning, I sort of wanted people to ask the question, why was upskirting not a sexual offence? But I didn't want to be involved in it because I knew that putting your head above the parapet comes with a lot of flack. And I was scared of that. But immediately it was obvious that having a personal experience and the human story is really motivating for people. And choosing something from your own experience is really critical as well, because you don't run out of passion if it comes from inside you. That doesn't stop because you care that much about it. So I would definitely reflect that experience, and I understand your experience wanting to be in the shadows, but I think speaking up is always better.
I totally agree with you. And I think we all have to overcome that fear. And the fear is real and it's palpable because you are going to get pushed back. But I think that partly once you have pushed through it, you realize you can do anything. And I have to say, I was fearful, really fearful about leading a coalition on family planning. I knew I was going to get blowback. And I'm Catholic, right? But it is personal. And at the end of the day, if we're going to lift up all women and all families, we have to push through that fear.
Totally agree. Resilience is the key.
It is.
It is.
And the one thing you learn is if you are that first voice, like you are, Gina, like we've talked to everyone else here, you will find you get support. You're never the only person who's experienced something. You may be the first to say it, but you're not the only person.
And it's amazing the people that show up to help you, men and women from all corners of the globe that you never expect. And you think, okay, wait a minute, this is a universal issue. This isn't just about me.
And that in itself is empowering.
Absolutely.
Barbara. Where's Barbara? Hi.
Hello, I'm Barbara. I'm here with Code First Girls. A bit about Code First Girls. We are currently working on balancing the male-female ratio in tech. So we are working on getting women into tech. And our goal as a social enterprise is to get by 2020, 20,000 women into tech. So we are providing free coding courses for them. And I'm currently working as an associate and managing those courses. I'm sorry, I'm a bit nervous. It's my first time talking.
You're doing great.
A bit about my background. I come from Croatia. I'm a scientist and immunologist, but currently working to get into tech industry as I find it extremely interesting and one of my passions. And besides immunology, I studied primatology, and my question will be a bit connected with that because I met amazing, inspiring scientists there who work on empowering local communities in developing countries. And I wanted to ask, has your work there and your travels, have you ever experienced your work being perceived as neocolonialism? And have you received resistance from local communities, both women and men in the communities? And if so, how did you approach it?
Thanks for that question. And I love your background in immunology because my background is computer science and I'm trying to learn biology and immunology for the job I have now. So what I would say to anybody listening is that you can learn anything at any age and go for it. So to your question about colonialism in Africa, I absolutely think about this a lot and worry about it. I was lucky enough that we got some great advice from former President Jimmy Carter when we got into this foundation work well over 20 years ago. President Carter came and visited us, and I was alone with him, and I said, President Carter, he'd already been doing a lot of work in global health in many countries in Africa, and I said, what should we know now that you learned so we don't have to relearn it? And he said, Melinda, every single thing that you might go in and try and help with in the developing world, he said, it has to be community-led. They have to own it. They have to want it. And he said it has to be their program. You might help fund it. You might bring some ideas from the West. You might bring some technology from the West, i.e. vaccines. But he said the community has to own it and want it because that's how you will create lasting change. And so we've tried to keep that in the forefront of our minds. And when we go into communities and do work in many, many different places, say in Africa or India or Bangladesh, We're working with locals who've worked in the community often for 30 or 40 years and who actually come from the community. And only if you do that work, I think, then do you do it in a culturally appropriate and sensitive way that people will take it up and allow those technologies or those ideas to change their lives.
Has it been difficult for you to go into communities and see that resistance and have your own opinions about things? And I know how to make this better, but you can't go in with that ideal because you know they've got traditions and you have to stick by them. How have you found that resistance, and how have you found kind of realigning yourself and how you think?
I've tried as I go in. So when I go into communities, I go in anonymously. As a Western woman, that is what they know, in a pair of khaki pants and a T-shirt. And I try to take off my Western hat. And I try not to judge. I much more try to say, what if I was this woman? What if I grew up in that exact situation and I was in this situation of poverty and I had the same children she has? What would I do? What lengths would I go to save my children? What would I want somebody from the West to know that I might want here to help lift myself up? And I think the best way I learned this was one of my very earliest trips I took. I was with a researcher, actually from Johns Hopkins, and we were out in India and in Thailand. And after I traveled with her for a number of days, she said to me, okay, we were crossing a river actually in a tiny boat. She says, okay, if you lived here as a woman, you've met all these women now, what would you do? What job would you have in this community? And she set up all the circumstances where I can't work in the formal economy, I can't do this, I can't do that. And I couldn't answer. And she said, and this was an extraordinarily well PhD educated woman from the West. And she said, you know what I would be? And I said, what? She said, a prostitute. And my jaw dropped. And she said, think about it. She said, if you had a child, 2 children, and you could not feed them, what length would you go? Would you sell your body if you had to, if you had no other means for feeding your children? And it really, one of those opening questions on my ending question on an opening trip I took, really just shifted my thinking about how you've got to go in and say, what if that was me sitting across from that mat? What if I was the person growing up in these exact circumstances? What would I do?
I took a trip to Nepal 2 years back, and I remember going to this school of girls, and I come in there, and I'm very lucky. I come from a single parent background, but a very strong mother who worked and raised me. And I remember meeting this girl and saying, what do you want to do when you're older? She goes, I really want to be a doctor. I'm like, yeah, you can do that. You can follow your dreams, do what you want to do. And she pulled the rug from under me. She went, I can't, because I don't have the same opportunity as you. And I think she was 12. And I said, she knows more than I do. Mm-hmm. And I needed that realization, because it's very easy. I'm very lucky because of where I was born and because of the opportunity I had in life. And I needed that to think, okay, we need to realign how we view things.
Absolutely.
I'm going to go to Ellie Cosgrave now.
Thank you so much. I just want to say I'm really inspired by the way in which you integrate your humanity into your business work. And I think I'm a feminist activist, but I'm also an engineer. And I'm trying to bring those two things together so that we can kind of re-understand the contribution of engineering to the world. And that's what my question is about today, particularly about gender and climate action. We know that women are more susceptible to the impacts of climate change. We know that after disasters, women are much more likely to die. In the 2003 French heat wave, 70% of the 150,000 people who died were women. In the Indian Ocean tsunami in 2004, 4 times as many women than men died. We also know that after disaster, women are much more likely than ever to experience gender-based and domestic violence. And so my question, as engineers struggling with how to create, how to reinvent our industry for climate change and usher in this kind of low-carbon, climate-resilient future, how do we ensure that engineers and the tech profession are able to understand the social and particularly the gendered impacts of their design decisions?
Yeah, great question. I think you absolutely have to have women voices at the table Anytime you're designing something for the future, you have to have all parts of society represented. And so you need to have a woman there to say, do you understand the impacts? Have we thought of how a woman might use this tool? Have we thought of how, if we get this tool done, is it designed for her and will it reach her? If you don't have a woman with that voice at the table, you make all kinds of mistakes in society. And you also sometimes bias your solution inadvertently so that it tailors towards men. We've had to learn this in our own work at the Gates Foundation. We're deeply involved in agriculture, and we're trying to make changes to agriculture to adapt so that we're adapting to the new pests that have come in Africa. For instance, for cassava, which is a crop a lot of women grow in Africa. But if we don't take women's input into those seeds, if we create a seed that takes something, a bean, say, that takes longer to cook, a woman won't accept it in her garden because she says, I don't have another hour to cook beans during the day. You're taking an hour away from something else I'm doing. So you have to have women with a seat at the table giving input, and you have to look at your distribution center. We're learning in agriculture so that it doesn't just reach men, it reaches the women farmers, because 50% of the farmers, more than, are women. So you always have to have the women's lens on the work.
I think that transfers to all industries, not just agriculture and engineering. We hear about male writing rooms. How can we universally storytell if it's only coming from one point of view? So the more people you have in the room, the broader it's going to be for everyone. I'm going to go to Kate Stevens. Where's Kate? Oh, there you are.
Hello, my name's Kate Stevens. I'm the chief executive of a charity called SmartWorks. We dress and coach women for their job interview. So a woman comes to us when she may have been turned down from, say, 10, 20 interviews, has lost that connection with who she is and what she's able to achieve. And we do a very simple thing. We give her the clothes she needs for the interview, chosen for her and styled for her. We give her the coaching, and she leaves, and 64% go on and get the job. So It's this amazing moment where a woman comes to an environment that is full of other women who believe in her and go on and make a tangible change in her life. We call it the mirror moment. We should call it the moment of lift, I think. And I guess my question is twofold. So what kind of moments have you seen in other settings that have really inspired you in that way that someone looks, or for us, it's when a woman looks in the mirror and drops her shoulders and thinks, maybe I can do this?
Yes.
And I wondered if you'd seen that elsewhere, or if there'd been a moment in your own life where that had been a key thing for you.
Yes, I've had many of those moments in my own life, and I've seen them for other women. They are what you're calling they're transformative moments, right? I think I got lucky. I know I got lucky in high school. I had a female teacher. I already knew I was good at what you all call maths, and she went and advocated to the head nun of our school to get us computers at a very early time where there are very, very few computers in schools. And she came to us girls and said, I know you all can program these computers. And she believed in me in math and in computer science. And it's what led eventually to my career, to me going to get a computer science degree and a degree in tech. And when I would come across these moments where other people would tell me I couldn't do things in tech because I was a woman, or the 10,000 paper cuts that so many women experience in any industry, you know, being these barriers coming up or indirect ways they're told you can't do that, I could keep her voice in my head. And I could remember my high school teacher, who I still know, Mrs. Susan Bauer, who believed in me. And so I tell all women, I tell my son and my 2 daughters, surround yourself with people who believe in you, who help you with your self-confidence, who know who you truly are and know what your talents are. Because when you have a group of people, like-minded people, who can tell you the truth and remind you and give you perspective that you can do anything, we can do anything. It just really helps at those critical moments in life, and that's clearly what you're doing with your organization.
It sounds brilliant. I actually have a question I want to ask the whole audience. And I think as a female, for me in the media industry, but no matter what industry you're in, when it comes to appearance, when it comes to, you can, and I know Gina Martin here before, I remember wearing a skirt before, and they're like, if you're wearing a skirt, are you asking for it? And different comments like this. And if you wear makeup, you can wear makeup and still be a feminist. I just want to bring this question out to the audience. How important is appearance to you and giving you confidence in dressing for yourself? back to Kate there.
Sorry, I have to follow that up. I mean, we see every day the power of clothes and fashion to be able to really give a woman a sense of who she is, because often it's not really about the clothes. It's just about what the clothes say about you and your state of mind.
How they make you feel.
Exactly. And if you can harness that as a force for good, it can be super destructive. But actually, if you can make it work, it really can change who you are and how you present. And I just think we should all be proud to just be the best version of ourselves. And if that involves wearing makeup or great clothes or fabulous purple boots that no one on the radio can see.
The purple boots make me feel good. No one can see it, it's radio, but I feel
I think
great.
we should go for it.
Yes, Sophia.
I think that reclaiming a healthy relationship with our body image and also self-expression, like it's a creative thing. And especially I think for mothers and people who have caregiving responsibilities or high demand lives, it's a way to, I guess, reclaim your identity and how you navigate this world and how you show yourself. So I think it's reimagining, I guess, how we relate to our bodies.
I think you put it beautifully there as well. Ellie?
I completely 100% agree with all of the comments and how dressing can empower. But I think it's important also to acknowledge the way in which the looks beauty industry and has been appropriated and weaponized against women, and that absolutely distinguish between those two. If it's an individual empowering choice, amazing. But if we're telling women that they must or should or buy this thing, then we have a problem, and that's oppression.
Sorry, that is actually perfect, because I was going to touch on that. So one of the things I actually do with some of my clients, because I get a lot of women who come to me for confidence coaching, and I actually set some of them with a challenge, and I'll say, okay, let's do a challenge together, and sometimes I join in it as well. Let's say we do a week and we wear no makeup for this entire week. I don't care if you have an interview, I don't care if you're going to be in a business meeting, just do it so that it's not something that you are using as a crutch, but instead as something that can be an addition to the power that you already possess in the inside of you, which I think is really important. But on the other flip side as well, I always say, you look good, you feel good, you do good. So that's my saying, and I take massive pride in how I look. So
You look great. You're wearing a very strong suit.
Thank you very much. Boohoo, everyone.
I'm going to go to Hayley. Where is Hayley? Hi, Hayley.
Hi, Melinda. It's so lovely meeting you. And I'm coming from a perspective of mental health. So in 2016, when I was 18 years old, I tried to commit suicide. I nearly overdosed. And I realized that as the issue of suicide is increasing, the age is decreasing. And I've had the opportunity to actually go out to Africa and work with African women and actually touch on mental health issues. And I think as you doing such powerful work and the moment of lift, you are lifting up so many women like myself. What does Melinda do to lift herself up? Because I think as a public figure, your mental health is just as important as ours. And I wanted to ask another cheeky question, if you can sign my book as well.
Thanks for the question, Hayley. So what do I do for my own mental health? I get outdoors. I find that when I am outdoors, yesterday I was quite jet lagged. I arrived in London from New York, and I got out twice yesterday and walked along the Thames. And it was a gorgeous day here in London. The people were out. I got to see interesting things going on I might not have seen otherwise. But being out for me in a garden helps a lot. Getting my feet in the grass. So even on cold mornings in Seattle, I actually take my shoes off and I walk out in my yard with my tea or my cup of coffee. And I play. I have play in my life, whether that's swinging with my youngest daughter on the swings or getting out and kayaking. I'm lucky enough to live on a lake, so I kayak some days with a friend. I get out pretty much rain or shine. But I really agree. We all need to look at our mental health, all women, all men around the world, at how do we refresh and restore our souls, because we live in an incredibly busy society. I think technology is great, but I think it's speeding up our lives, and sometimes it's really important to slow down. And the last thing I'll say is I'm also a big meditator. I meditate a lot, and I'm learning that you may not have time for even 30 minutes sometimes in the morning, but you could do a little bit in the morning, a little at lunch, a little in the afternoon, and a little at dinner. Even if it's like 5 minutes a day, they're like pearls on a string in a necklace. They start to add up over time, and I find that really helps just keep me calm.
You know what's lovely? You're a real person. Isn't that lovely? Because sometimes you think, the Melinda Gates, and it's like anyone, we look at what you do and the great work you do, but you're just a human too, and you need your time.
We all need our time.
Something refreshing in that.
Can I make a comment about the clothing? Because I absolutely loved what all the women said here, which was fabulous. I grew up in the South in the United States, and there you're told to dress perfectly all the time. The women, when I was growing up, would dress up to go to the grocery store. In fact, we kind of joke about it. One of my friends ran the cash register in the grocery store, and we would joke about how many women came dressed, their makeup on, what they looked like that day. I had to learn to let down my perfectionism on clothes. So I want to go out and look very professional in the workforce, and I do. But my big challenge was to learn to go to the shopping mall in a pair of jeans or sneakers and with, you know, my hair up in a ponytail and no makeup. And I do that all the time now because it's like, oh, it's so nice not to have my makeup on some days, right? So I agree with you. We have to dress how we feel best and feel best then about our bodies, and do that in appropriate ways wherever that makes sense. And so anything is okay.
Sometimes my best is a onesie.
Yes.
That's my best sometimes, hair, top knot. I want to go to Trish now. I'm just going to point out, Trish, it's not your real name for anonymity. We're going to call you Trish. Hi, Trish.
Hi, my name is Trish. I'm from Women Refugee Women. Firstly, I thank you for all the support you give to less privileged communities and helping to improve the quality of life for others. I came from such a background, then managed to work my way out of poverty, but everything came crashed down again due to my husband passing away in 1998, followed by economic and political challenges in my home country, which led me to flee and seek asylum in the UK. My question to you is, what advice can you give to someone like me who wants to one day be in a position to empower refugee women and children?
I would say do exactly what you're doing today, Trish, which is to keep using your voice. Women in these refugee situations, it's very, very difficult and tough. And when I meet them, I see them doing so much for their families to try and make life better for everybody. And I think we have to tell the stories of what that's like to be a refugee and to have to leave your own country, and help people understand what that is like and also what you would need or other refugees would need. What I want you to know is that our voices are powerful in this work and our stories are powerful, and it is what creates change.
Thank you, Trish. I'm going to go to Kate now. Hi, Kate.
Hi,
How are
Kate.
you? Let's get your mic.
I'm Kate Kinnamont. I'm the oldest person in the room, and I'm delighted to have my daughter here too, because we're both working in different fields but to help with gender equality. I'm one of the founder members of Time's Up here, and I think one of the things that really strikes me is how many women, every woman in this room, is part of an organisation to help other women, and yet we don't see that with men. Why do you think it is that women are the ones who step up to help the communities?
Well, I think, so I don't think men are universal. So I definitely see some men absolutely helping and running great organizations. But I think for women's equality and women's empowerment, it also takes strong women like yourself, like your daughter Jane. What I want you to know is that our voices are powerful. We see the issues differently quite often because we lived that journey, or we have a sister who's lived that journey, or a child, or some other woman. And so I think it takes women's voices to uniquely bring those issues to the forefront and to say, this is important. And then we have to bring men along with us, as I said, enlightened men who also see the issues the same way or are willing to learn, because it is going to take men helping us unlock society. They do hold many of the keys of power still today. They're often the ministers of finance or are men. Often the people who hold board seats are men. Often the politicians are men. And so we need to make sure that they are also helping women and supporting other women, not just mentoring them, but sponsoring them, reaching out and bringing a woman up in her career, or saying, guess what? You can run for office. You may not know you're ready to run for office. I see that you're ready to run for office. And so it's going to take men and women, but I think women have a unique role in this to bring these issues forward if we're going to recognize all these barriers that hold women back and break through them.
think as well, just touching on something you said there, by helping people, we're not knocking ourselves or preventing ourselves from going further. I think there's always that mindset as well that if we are trying to help people in any way, that maybe it will prevent me from getting that promotion or me from getting that job. But it doesn't, because from the book, you lift one person, we all lift together.
Absolutely. And you make society better. And I do believe, even early in my working career, I believe what goes around comes around.
Oh, karma, it's a great thing, isn't it? I'm going to go to Penny. Where's Penny? Oh, there you are. Hi, Penny.
Hi. Such an honor to be here. I am a mental health advocate and blogger, and also a youth mentor. I'm training to be a life coach. I started blogging after being diagnosed with ADHD and complex post-traumatic stress disorder when I was 30. I lost my mum to heroin overdose when I was 15, and then got into a really abusive relationship around the same time. So, I kind of knew that the circumstance I'd been through had affected the way that I perceive the world and, relate. When I was 30, I got diagnosed with the mental health issues, and I didn't have a clue what mental health issues were before that. Like, I had no idea. So that's why I blog and just try to speak about, just the things that we're not to blame for. Because I was held back all my life. I couldn't act on any of my dreams because, I just felt so stuck and blocked and less than. That's a little bit about me and what I do. I have to read my question, because if I say it wrong, I'll forget the point. Basically, after a life impacted by the overdose of my mum and an abusive relationship where I was stabbed by my boyfriend, and also years of struggling with undiagnosed ADHD, which I have often been told women don't get. I've often been told adults don't get. So getting support and help has been just so difficult. So a lot, we're told women don't get it, and the symptoms are so different in women. It's to blame for a lot of reasons women have been looked down on. The symptoms of ADHD, they're not always hyperactive on the outside, it's usually on the inside, which causes eating disorders, addiction, all the things I've been through, and my mum did too, and it's hereditary. So I failed to notice the impact trauma had on my life and my life choices. So how can we make a society wake up to the real damage that trauma has on humanity?
I think we have to be willing to talk about all of these issues, mental health issues, trauma, and how it affects people. Because if we don't speak about it, then it feels like it's just me, or it feels like, oh, this is scary, or there's too much stigma. The truth is, the number of people that face some sort of mental health issue, it's a huge range and a spectrum depending on their genetics and also the circumstances in their life. Obviously, you're saying you've faced many, many difficult issues. But unless we talk about these and normalize it and are willing to tell our stories, and then we won't change the system. And the system has to serve everybody. I don't care whether you live in the UK or the US, we have to build the right systems in places like Malawi or Bangladesh. People face issues in their lives and they impact our brains. Our brains are just another organ, just like our heart is an organ, right? We talk about heart disease. We talk about heart attack. We do preventative things to take care of our hearts. We need to do preventative things to take care of our brains, or to say to somebody, if you've been in this situation, you should know the chance you're going to have post-traumatic stress is high, and here's a resource that might help you. And so I'm a big believer in these days in people speaking out. I'm seeing more young people speak out on social media. It's okay for me to say, because she's allowed me to. I've had 3 children, each of whom have faced their own journeys. My youngest daughter has gone public with the fact that she has ADHD, she has some dyslexia. And just by her talking about it in her school community and a little bit more broadly, more and more kids talk about it. And that's just one person, right? Not with a big platform. So I think we all have to make these things okay to talk about, whether it's ADHD or OCD or a trauma you've experienced, abuse. Yeah. I talk about 3/4 of a page in my book about abuse, an deeply abusive relationship I was in. It's not something that was at all easy. That's the page in the book I wrote and wrote and wrote and rewrote about 10 or 20 times, because it took me it's taken me a lifetime, honestly, to face what happened to me, and it's taken help from somebody else, and then to write it down. But I thought it was important to write it down so that women understand many of us have faced harassment or abuse, and it can happen to anybody, and that's not okay because it silences us. And it's only in sharing our stories that we'll change society.
Can I ask as well, because you've always been quite private about your own personal life, but writing this book was a big step for you.
Huge.
You put things in there that you haven't talked about before, and you're basically doing what you're telling everyone else to do. How did you find that on a personal level?
Hard, incredibly hard. But I had a really good editor, and he was both a writer and an editor, and he encouraged me. He said, Melinda, there'll be things that you might decide to record or write down and then feel like you want to pull them back. But he said, try and leave them out there and see if you get comfortable with them during the editing process, because there's sometimes the pieces that people can most relate to. And I have to say, for my parents, I am a very private person, as are my parents. And so when they saw a very late draft of the book, when I showed it to them that some of these pieces were in, they were saying, are you sure you want to put that out there? And for good reason. But I said, no, I have to tell my stories, because these are the stories of other women too. I know it. And unless I'm willing to share my stories, why would others be willing to share their lives with me as well?
It's perfect. And you will connect with so many women on a completely different level.
I hope so. And
You have.
You know what's
You
been
have.
amazing is once the book was out, the number of emails I got from other women who I've known for a long time, who maybe are on a board or in a seat of power, and they would say, you know why I am the way I am? Here's what happened to me. Some women who haven't even been public about their own abuse. And I was like, wow.
I'm going to go to, I think this might have to be our last question, just checking on the time there, to Holly. Where's Holly? Hi, Holly.
Hi, so I'm Holly Boothroyd. I'm a software engineer at Microsoft as well. I'm one of Code First Girls' Ones to Watch for 2019 because of my women in STEM advocacy work with various organizations. And I was wondering, so with when working with leaders and community members to sort of uplift these people on the margins that you speak about, have you ever faced any kind of gender discrimination or bias? And if so, how did you overcome that while still kind of making progress for the people that you're trying to help?
Thanks for that question. So, yes, I'm a computer scientist by training too. You probably know I worked at Microsoft for 9 years. And I definitely faced what women in tech often call the 10,000 paper cuts, where I would, not inside the company quite so much, because I was one of the few women that had a technical degree at the time, but outside, I would go out in industry and people would think maybe I didn't know what I was talking about, and I have to prove myself in a meeting. So I have faced this all my life. I faced it as a computer science student in undergraduate. I talk about in the book, I also have faced it when I walk into a meeting with a prime minister or president with my husband standing next to me. They assume that he knows more than I do. And so what I have learned is that you have to use your voice. You just have to speak up and be assertive. You don't have to be rude about it, but we have to be assertive and say what we know to be true. And in claiming our power, it helps people understand that women have a lot to say and they do know what they're talking about. And the more we can do that, the more we lift up other women, and the more we empower women, no matter what their income status is, to speak their truth. And what I have come to know by meeting so many women around the world, and many I talk about in this book, in their communities in Africa, they have incredible assets. They have so much knowledge, and they're going to such great lengths. We have to make sure that we empower them, because they know what works for their families and their communities. If we empower them, they're going to help us change the world. They will change the world.
That was going to be our last question, but I think we can slip in one more, maybe.
Okay, great.
One more. Where's Karina?
Hi.
Hi.
So I'm Karina. I own Menagerie, which is a restaurant and bar, but it's aimed at women, which is quite rare for hospitality. And I started out as a journalist and ended up working in restaurants and bars with my ex-husband. After 8 years of doing that with him, we decided to part ways and we got divorced, and I had to step out of his shadow. And I kind of lost a lot of my identity. I didn't really know what to do next. And that was a big moment for me, where I had to suddenly stand on my own 2 feet without a man next to me to reinforce what I was saying, and open this restaurant on my own. Obviously in a massively male-dominated industry, which So I've had to constantly repeat and reinforce what I've needed to get done, you know, much to everybody kind of rolling their eyes at me and not necessarily following through and doing what I'm asking them to do. But we've pushed forward with it, and it's doing really well now, and it is aimed at women, for women, by women, so that's going great. But a lot of people have said to me, who's your mentor, or find a mentor, or find a woman out there to support and inspire you. So I found it really difficult because I'm 33, work in hospitality. I've not had another woman that's owned restaurants in this way to look to. So obviously you're completely at the top of your game and you're a massive inspiration to all of us, but who inspires you?
Chancellor Merkel. I've been lucky enough to meet her in many business settings, but also a bit personally, and also a few of the people around her, another strong female friend of hers. And she inspires me because I see, I mean, now there's been Theresa May has also been at that G7 level, but there are so many photos of her standing alone in that group of men. And, you know, she's a physicist, and she had to do so much strategy to get where she was. And she said, you know, she was underestimated for so many years in politics, and people would try to sideline her, and she just kept going and believing in herself. And then to stand in that strong group of men as the only woman, wow. And so I see a woman like her, or I see Christine Lagarde, you know, who's been the head of the IMF and now is going to the ECB. She is a fabulous woman. And again, not an easy path. And what I've come to learn is that when you find another woman leader, they don't have to be in your industry. You stand beside each other and we give one another a lift without even realizing it. And so I'll end up in forums with other women like that, and I realize I gain self-confidence from them, and sometimes me sitting next to one of those type of women, they gain self-confidence from me. So find a peer, find somebody who's been through what you've been through, find a male ally. But there is something in power of women, and I know that to be true. And I know it from not only some of those circles that I'm lucky enough to be in terms of female leadership. It's why I actually use my role and I'm not behind the scenes. I realize we have to role model for young girls. It makes a difference. But I've learned it at the village level. You sit in a group of 24 women, they are lifting each other up. They're saving money together. They're helping one another finance, you know, a bicycle for another one. There is power in the collective of women to break through the barriers in society. And it's why we have to have women at all levels of society standing by one another and saying, this is what I know to be true, and here's how we're going to change things. So I applaud what you're doing in the restaurant industry.
Thank you, Karina. And I think finishing on just what you're saying there, be surrounded by empowering women that will lift you up. Do you feel more lifted up than you do in this room right now?
No, you walk into this room and you just see the energy and you feel it while you're here. It's an amazing group of women.
I want to take this opportunity to thank Melinda, because you had a lot of questions thrown at you, and thank you so much for giving up your time and giving so much. So please hear it from Melinda Gates, everyone.
Thank you.